All right, we are back. Thanks again for joining me for another installment of Lore Equals Gameplay. For this one, we're going to do a read through of Far From Home Whispers in the Walls. This is the latest comm link. This is actually a series that's on on RSI. And let's see if we go. It's not searchable right here, but if you go to the Robert Space Industries website and you go to Comlink, um, uh, you go to Comlink, you can click on it and you can search through here. And there's a whole bunch of things that are like this that are, it's a series. They've been many of these. Um, but these ones are written by a character named Ol Jegger, who is a independent hauler, independent cargo hauler, who likes his solitude and is always out, what he calls out on the drift, in the black, on these long hauls where he's hauling cargo from one place to another. But this one is interesting because it's every year for Halloween. Star Citizen has the in-game in-lore event called Day of the Vara. It's sort of their 30th century version of Halloween. And so they release lore posts like this that are meant to be like, there's multiple ones over the years that have been, essentially scary stories within the verse as part of that theme. Give me 1 second. I'm going to take a sip of water. But I wanted to read this one and talk to you guys about it because not only is it an interesting story and kind of fun, and I love this stuff that comes out of the narrative team, but as we're reading through it, I'm going to point out a few statements, and they should set off some bells in your head related to how Star Citizen and its gameplay are being designed. And that's why I do these segments, do lore equals gameplay, because lore bits like this, they sort of they paint a picture of what gameplay is, what life is going to be like in the verse, and what gameplay regarding life in the verse is going to be like. And with this one, you're like, ooh, okay, this one's written by a hauler, and so it's definitely going to be about hauling a little bit. There are also going to be a lot of themes in here that are very related to actor status, and how things are likely to work in game, and it will affect not only haulers but everybody. So let's get into it. Pardon me, I've got hiccups. I just realized that my dog was making a bunch of noise in the background. So, transmission begins. Hey all, Ol Jegger here with an. You know what? I'm going to read this in an interesting voice. We're going to do sort of an in-character reading. Hey all, Ol Jegger here with another Far From Home, and let me tell you, I am feeling that old part right now. You and me both, Jegger. Oh man, I got back from a 6-day work trip at 1 a.m. on Sunday, and I'm still recovering. I got like 6 hours of sleep in the previous 60 prior to getting home, and I'm still feeling it. Haven't been sleeping well the last couple of days, and I'm paying the price for it. Got that bone deep weariness that makes everything ache. I feel ya. I feel ya. Unfortunately, I'm still too wired to sleep just yet. Tried and it wouldn't stick. Figured I'd settle down sipping on this cup of tea and telling you all about my recent, well, I was gonna say adventure, but I don't know if I'd even call it that. Dang, this tea is good, like a hug and a mug. My friend Nico makes the blend themselves from plants that grow on their mountain out on Cascom and Castra. It's his cabin perched right below the snow line with some of the prettiest sunsets you've ever seen. Might be time to go visit them soon since my tin's almost empty. Maybe after I finish this run. Castra and Cascom are my favorite planet in my favorite system with my favorite landing zone. If you haven't watched it, Paul Shelley of Astropub and Astro Historian did a system survey on Castra. I highly recommend you go watch it. He does a really good job reporting it on it. The Castra system is super cool. And once you go read it or listen to it, you'll find out why I think it's cool. Back to the story. Right now, I'm piloting Shauna. Shauna's is the name of his ship. through Banshee, which is a system I don't exactly feel comfortable in. Probably being here is what started me spinning out in the first place. Could also be the fact that Vara is just around the corner, and it's hard not to have ghosts on the mind to begin with. Geez, that's right. I didn't even say this was a ghost story yet. If you can't already tell, my thoughts tend to wander a bit when I'm this tired. So before we continue, here's the Banshee system. Banshee has the unique distinction of being the only UEE system discovered with a pulsar at its center. Although the planets are completely inhospitable due to the intense radiation, Banshee 3 is home to some of the most extensive mining operations in the UEE. Banshee 3 is a super cool planet. If you haven't looked at the lore for Banshee, the Banshee system in Banshee 3, I highly suggest it. There's also some really cool concept art for what the settlements on Banshee 3 look like with their underground facilities. Underground facilities, like in CitizenCon that we just saw. Banshee 3 is like the biggest ones ever. So we're going to talk more about that in another lore equals gameplay. But here's the Banshee system. Way out here, far from the core of the UEE. Way out here on the fringe. So here's Banshee. So let's go ahead and zoom on in. Here's Lorona. Here's Banshee 2, Banshee 1. Lorona is Banshee 3. It's a named planet because there's actually settlements there, people living underground in order to mine the planet while being protected from the pulsar star. Let's get back to this story. Actually, I remember this one time when I was first starting out. The promise of a massive bonus had me burning 56 hours straight trying to get a haul delivered before the deadline. Talk and tired. Tried all the usual tricks of stims and chewing on Sujin root. Even tried wearing these electric pants that were supposed to give me a little shock every time I started to drift, but I had to take them off because when my leg hair caught fire. Pause. Electric pants that cause your leg hair to catch on fire. Can you imagine how awkward it would be if someone, if you're just exploring the verse and you happen upon this derelict, this ship is adrift, and they're not answering to hails, and you board the ship to figure out what's going on, and you find this charred corpse because their pants caught on fire because they were trying to stay awake. But this is what I wanted to highlight. Ol Jegger is on a long. He's talking about how he was on a hauling run, and he was trying to beat a deadline. He was trying to get these goods, to where they needed to go on a deadline, and he had to try and stay awake on this long trip. He was also, he's talking about trying to get there as fast as possible. So not only is he trying to stay awake, awake at the wheel, but he also is trying to get the most speed out of his ship in order to beat that deadline. These are subtle hints, but at the same time they're not subtle. There's going to be we're going to have hauling contracts in game where, hey, if they might be where you need to get this here before this time, before this period, because maybe whatever it is will expire. We already have those in game, where if you don't get them to where they need to be, they blow up in your ship. But you could have time sensitive goods that aren't necessarily volatile. There could also be a bonus where if we just need it here, but if you get it here before this date, we'll pay you a bonus, and that bonus could be sizable. But in order to make it, you have to really go fast while in quantum to get to where you need to go, or maybe not in quantum. Maybe that might be quantum sensitive cargo. But you're going to be actively piloting your ship. You can't fall asleep at the wheel. You can't just go AFK in order to make the deadline. You're going to be actively piloting your ship, doing the engineering and resource management gameplay in order to squeeze everything you can out of your ship in order to get there on time and get that bonus, or get the time sensitive cargo there. The other thing that's really important to think about is your character. You need to take care of your character, and so maybe this haul is going to take a while in game, and you're going to be at it for a while. But your character is going to need to sleep, just like they need to drink and eat. That's why there are beds on your ship. Um, and so I think that this is a not so subtle hint that there are going to be actor status effects, not only associated with eating, drinking, the environment, but also from fatigue. And so if you push your character too far in game doing anything, but this apply, doesn't just apply to haulers, but it applies to everybody, that you may have actor status effects that will impair your character and your gameplay, that will only be relieved by stims or chewing on sujin root or sleeping. But this is why, hey, if you might have to share some of your payout of that bonus with your other, with your crew members, if you have a co-pilot, or like with long haul truckers, they drive with two people sometimes so they can take turns. This is real life put into the game. It's no different. Truckers take stims and all sorts of stuff all the time. I can't tell you how many times as a paramedic I've run calls on truckers who are just spun out on meth and God knows what, because they're trying to stay awake in order to get what they need, get their goods that they're hauling where they need it on time in order to make more money. This is the same thing. Well, I haven't seen anyone get their legs caught on fire behind the wheel of an 18 wheeler because they're wearing electric pants. I've seen these things. You've heard these stories. Truckers wrecking their trucks because they fell asleep behind the wheel. Truckers literally having hallucinations because they're on stims and they've been awake for way too long, or stimulants, and they've been awake for too long, and calling 911 because they're losing their damn minds out in the middle of nowhere and seeing things. We'll get more into that. But this paragraph in particular, this is not subtle. This is, that the narrative team isn't painting the designers in a corner saying this is exactly how you do it, but they're just laying it out for, okay, these are elements that are going to be in the game. The game designers, and gameplay feature teams are going to implement this how they want to, but this is stuff that's going to be in the game and a part of taking care of your character, and that sort of risk versus reward gameplay that CIG is all about. So yeah, let's finish this part of the story up. My leg hair caught on fire. You should have seen the state I was in by the time I arrived. The absolute exhaustion of the trip was sitting on me so heavy that I wound up scraping the hangar doors on my way in. Instead of crossing the finish line, I crashed into it. Between the repairs to my hull and the station, plus my citation for flying impaired, I wound up owing more credits than the bonus paid. Wish I could say I learned my lesson on that one, but it took a few more years before I finally understood that sacrifice and sleep just ain't worth it, no matter how big the payout. Risk versus reward gameplay. You may be able to fly your hull B by yourself, but if you're trying to do a longer haul with your hull B and you don't have a co-pilot to switch out with, so that way you can, go back to the your crew quarters and take a nap, have something to eat, get something to drink to take care of your character. Your character might have actor status effects that affect your ability to fly your ship, that affect your ability to use the resource management system in order to get the most out of your ship in order to get there on time. This is why the raft is meant to have multiple crew members, because it's got that long range. It's got all that fuel on board the ship. It's meant to be able to do these things. But if you do it by yourself, you run the risk of either needing to take a break, or if you don't take a break, damaging your ship while flying it. These are important things to consider. This is emergent gameplay like nothing else. But this is just for hauling. You can imagine what me, a wannabe hotshot dropship pilot, what could happen to me if my character has these negative actor status effects because I've been making too many runs down to the surface for too long, and not letting my character rest. And oops, now we go splat onto the surface, and I wreck my ship, and I kill my the people riding in the back who are depending on me. There goes my reputation. The ship's going to cost me a ton of money. I might have medical, my medical insurance will go up, all that stuff. Lore equals gameplay, folks. Read it, know it, love it. Continue on. Speaking of being slow to learn, here I am rambling again, halfway through my tea, and I haven't even gotten to the story I wanted to share. Like I said, this is one of those space spookers, the type that folks like to share around a campfire. I'm sure any of you that have been on the drift for long enough have your own stories like this one, where something unexplained happens and you start to unravel. When the hole that normally feels like home begins to feel like a cage that you're trapped in. And those hums and clanks that normally serenade you to sleep all seem to portend certain doom. Think it's just one of those things that comes from spending a lot of time on your lonesome. Stay in the black too long and things go weird. See, it all started a few days ago, right after I picked up a quantum sensitive shipment, here we go again, from a station not too far from Lorona. It was going to be a slow burn, but I was all right with it. Slow burn. So he's not in quantum. He's taking a quantum sensitive shipment, through normal flight mode, essentially, not quantum, in order to get from this station to probably to Lorona, because he can't quantum. But he's flying his ship. For some reason he can't sleep, and it's affecting him. It was going to be a slow burn, but I was all right with it. Been keeping up with practicing my music, just started reading a new book on the history of terraforming, and I had a whole bunch of questions and messages from you all to sort through. Basically, not only was I all set to keep myself busy for the week, I was going to take to cart this stuff to where it was going. I was actually looking forward to the peace and quiet. I had been on that station for longer than I liked while I hunted down an electrical problem. Let's just say that I had my fill and then some of being around strangers. First 2 days on the drift were pure bliss. But then on the third day, right after I had finished eating a bowl of rancher stew, I heard it for the first time. A voice. I froze where I was, sure I was imagining things. A moment passed, and then another. When I didn't hear anything, I put it out of my mind, confident it was just a compressor settling in or the like. But then, a few hours later, as I was nestled in my bunk picking out a song I'd been learning on my guitar, I heard the voice again. It sounded far away and small, but I was able to pick out one word clear as glass. Die. I shot up like a dart and turned all the lights back on. My heart was racing, and you could sand the paint off a hole with how sharp the prickles were standing up along my arms. I'm not normally one to spook so easy, but, well, I ain't talked about this yet, but I had someone die aboard Shauna not too long ago. It was about 5 years past, and I was here in Banshee again. Met a wayward soul trying to head out of system, and it just so happened that I was going to Fora after my next stop. Fora is connected to Banshee by a large jump point over here. As you might guess, it's pretty rare for me to want company on board, but something about them told me I should say yes when they asked for the ride. Once we were flying, I learned that they were a bit of a musician. Wasn't long before they busted out a slack box and started toying away at it. Not sure if all you've ever heard one before, since they're not the most popular instrument. But if you haven't, they pretty much sound like a fiddle that's been through tough times. Anyway, they started playing, I started singing, and it wound up being a very nice way to pass the time. That was until they started into From the Fire. Only made it to the first verse when the tears started rolling. Didn't really think too much about it. It's a sad song to begin with, and music has a special way of moving people. You know, after the song finished, they went to use the head to freshen up, and well, I'll spare you all the details, but some of you may remember that I stopped broadcasting for a bit that year. Now you know why. Almost even considered giving up Shauna because I wasn't comfortable being on board her for a while. Luckily, the long break combined with some much needed therapy got me back in the skies. So, I'm gonna take this as them saying, Ol Jegger saying that they played that sad song, and his guest on board Shauna was playing the sad song because he was sad, and went into the shoilet, the shitter toilet, and or shower toilet, yeah, the shoilet, and probably took their own life. Yeah. Pretty rough stuff. I could see why that might make you want to get rid of your ship and take a little break, need a little therapy. So when I started hearing this strange voice not too far from the very coordinates where they passed, you can bet your last credit that I thought it might be their spirit come back. Especially since the song I had been practicing, You guessed it, uh, from the fire. I always say that the universe is too big of a place not to be filled with coincidence, but it's hardly a comfort when a ghost is haunting you. I waited about 2 more hours, holding my breath almost the whole time, waiting to hear that voice again. Nothing. Decided to try to go to sleep. Not a minute had passed after laying down when I hear it, the voice in barely a whisper saying, "About to die." It continued on like this. Every few hours, a whisper telling me that my death was drawing ever closer. I was seriously thinking about dumping the cargo and burning straight the hell out of that system. But I decided to take my own advice about what to do when things get screwy, and I commed to the closest dock I could find for a remote consult. After hearing my tale, they said that it looked like I might be experiencing early onset dementia, which only got me more scared than I already was. As a career paramedic, I can tell you that if you're suspecting dementia system or symptoms in a patient who is still somewhat with it, or is struggling with their own mentation, the last thing you want to do is tell them that you think they have dementia. That's a sure way to make that call go from bad to worse in a hurry. Yeah, so don't do that. Not sure what this doc was thinking, but maybe he was new, fresh from the universities in the Red Horse system. They recommended that I come in for a full scan as soon as possible. Dumping my full hold and QT into the closest med center was looking more and more like the best course of action. If the doc was right, I could be a serious danger to myself. But I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't some trick my mind was playing on me. Everything in my being was telling me that the voice was real. I tried to make a decision about what to do, but found myself spiraling. I was too tired and too scared to think straight. But you know what old hollers say to do when you can't decide? Take a shower. Don't know if it's the water, the sound, or being naked, but something about taking a quick rinse that just helps you think better. Next time you're stuck, give it a try. Sure as hell helped out this time. Okay, so his guest that was on Shauna 5 years back offed himself in the shower. That's what we're going with. He definitely died while he was in the bathroom. Whether he offed himself or not, we don't know. But it kind of insinuated that. But I don't know if I would be thinking that taking a shower in that same bathroom would be the most productive way of calming myself. All I can think about is like, okay, what if you open the door and there's an apparition right there ready to, pull your soul out through your eyeballs or something. You think he's telling you you're about to die. Maybe don't go in the same bathroom that the guy died in. I don't know. That's just me. Sure as hell helped out this time. As I was lathering up my hair, I hear the voice again, but this time I noticed something. It was louder. Why the hell would it be louder in the shower? Thinking it through, my only answer was the vent. So I rinse off as quick as can be, put my clothes back on, and wait with my ear as close to the little hatch as possible. When the voice finally came again, this time I could make it out saying, "Warning, batteries are about to die. Please charge unit." 2 seconds later, I was tearing away the panel with my multi-tool, and after a bit of digging around, I found my ghost, a T98 handheld diagnostic unit. Seems that I had left the damn thing in the wall back at the station while I was doing my repairs. He mentioned earlier that he was at that station for a while, tracking down an electrical issue in his ship, and that's why he was eager to get back underway. Didn't know it had a voice warning for low batteries. Not sure who the hell decided that was a good feature to include, but the thing had very nearly driven me to the brink of madness. Almost smashed it with a hammer just out of spite. But instead of doing that, I tucked it back into its charging bay and I brought out my guitar. Sang from the fire loud and clear and felt a lot better when it was done. It wasn't too long after that I started brewing my tea, and here we are now. Feel a lot better getting to share all that, even the hard parts, even the parts where I come out looking like a damn fool. Think I might even be able to sleep now. Wish me luck. Until next time, sweet dreams. This is Ol Jegger signing off. So I absolutely love these lore bits. I think they're great. They're great ways to do storytelling within the verse. But I do lore equals gameplay to not only be able to read these to you, and it's kind of fun to get into character, but also to incorporate what Nazareth and I do in the Pathfinders podcast, along with my love for lore. in the lore of the game. With the Pathfinders podcast, Nazareth and I do deep dives into various aspects of the game. Whether it's ways that the game is being developed, gameplay mechanics in the way that CIG has documented how they're designing them and implementing them, all sorts of things like that. And so it makes it so that way Nazareth and I are both very familiar with the development of the game, the features of the game, the different mechanics of the game, the tech behind it. We're intimately familiar with, because we do these deep dives in those elements and how they're being designed, and all the various literature that CIG has put out over the years about them. And so when I read these lore pieces, all I can think about is like, wait a minute. Oh, this is totally actor status effects. This is totally, the invert. This is the inverse of medical gameplay, because we already have drugs that you can give in order to combat active status effects. Well, as far as medicine, this is the same thing. Using stems or chewing on sujin root that maybe you bought at some shop in order to keep your character from having these negative effects. By that you could get by not sleeping for a long period of time, by not letting your character rest, and thinking, it really just goes to show you that these actor status effects could very well affect your gameplay. And it's not just haulers, it's not just your ability to hold the stick in your ship. Your hands, your character's hands might shake and might make it difficult for you to do different actions, whether it's repairing your ship, tuning things for resource management, aiming down the sights of your gun. We've seen these sorts of things in many games over the years. It's a very common aspect of video games. And in these paragraphs, they nestled these in here as part of the greater story, but they nestled them in here to not so subtly tell us that you're going to have to take care of your character, and you can either take care of them by living a good healthy life and drinking water, eating healthy food, and getting regular sleep, or you can take drugs and really push it, but by doing that you incur more risk. Or in order to avoid incurring that risk, you can have go the multi-crew route. You can get people to help you, but you'll have to share that payout that you would be getting as part of that bonus that you might be going for. And this is just a giant heaping amount of player agency, player choice lumped into one paragraph as part of a scary story within the game's lore. And that's why I really love this stuff. And that's all I have for this episode of Lore Equals Gameplay. Shorter than the previous one, but it's fun to read these installments from Ol Jegger, just like we read. What was the one from the pirate with the pirate superstitions a month back? I'm going to continue to do these whenever we get these new lore posts in order to help illustrate why these things are included in the lore and how they illustrate what gameplay and life will be like in the verse. But I'll also be going through random things that I find, like what we talked about in the previous episode with the Squadron 42 leak and the lore surrounding those ships and why those ships make sense to be designed the way they are. The Galactopedia update for this month is occurring right now. And so next week on Tuesday, I will be doing the next episode of Lore Equals Gameplay, where we'll be going through the Galactopedia update with the help of the Ark Starmap. So I just, again, want to thank all of you guys for joining me live. We've got a good number of viewers hanging out, and I want to thank you guys for participating and hanging out with me live in chat. This episode will be posted live onto my YouTube. The link is still up in the stream chat. So if you can't catch these things live, you can catch them later on my YouTube. So please give me a follow here on Twitch. Hop on over to my YouTube and like and subscribe for more content. Join me in my Discord for lots of interesting and fun conversation, as well as gameplay nights where we'll be playing either Star Citizen or co-op games together and having a lot of fun. And please join me for the first installment of the Armchair Admirals and Generals podcast this Friday, October 28th at 9 p.m. Eastern. join me, Night Cobb, and Atira Kell for some really interesting conversation surrounding some of the stuff that we got out of CitizenCon. Um, and we'll be doing a lot more of that going forward. Thanks again, everyone, and I hope to see you in the future in the community. Goodbye, y'all.